click continue. Oh, got it.
Okay. All right. Well, to start off with, would you like to say your name and where you are?
Yes, I'm Adriana Bellerose, and I live in Maine, in the US.
Okay. And the first question for you is, who are you as a human being? And that can be anything you'd like to share, values, passions, qualities of yourself.
That's a hard question already to ask. Who am I? I am, well, I was an executive for several organizations, nationwide organizations. I am very passionate about leadership and people and change. Very passionate about people making their own changes individually, also changes in organizations. So I'm a change agent. On the personal side, I'm pretty active. I love to, as I mentioned earlier, cross-country ski. I cycle, I kayak. And lately I've been joining my husband in some of his sports, which is snowmobiling and a little more camping.
A little more camping. Well,
a little more
cross-country skiing.
Yeah.
Winter
We're
camping?
not camping in the winter time.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. And what would you say are some of your values that you carry through these different parts of your life?
I would say the first value, well, they're not in order, is passionate. I'm very passionate about when I decide to do something. I'm passionate about that. I have a lot of energy. It could be my work. It can be my outdoor adventures. I have a daughter who's 32. I'm passionate about her and her life. And I was passionate about being a mom, still am, and even though it's in a different stage. Values, I know everyone throws out that integrity value. I think I believe that we live with a lot of integrity, both my husband and I. We care about the community. We care about people that are in our lives. What else are my values? I value confidentiality. I value openness, and I value courage. How's that?
Yeah, that's interesting for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And a little bit sort of maybe where some of these things come from would be to ask you what comes to mind as an event or as a set of circumstances in your life that you would say has really shaped you.
Well, my parents had 5 children, and they were young when they started their family. My dad was in the military. He was an officer in the military. He's retired. Both my parents are still alive. I would say that their value system of raising 5 children and trying to do it in a way where there was little money and a lot of mouths to feed. So the working values, the hard work, those are values. I would say my parents definitely shaped that. And I think that as I've, we all like to think we have values, early on from when we're born, they don't really change or shift. But I think that mine changed or deepened as I became a mother. Though I think many of those values around raising a child, and especially in rural Maine, education was important. And I was the first generation to ever go to college. And since then, of course, several of my siblings did as well. My mother finished high school when she was 38 years old. And my father is an engineer, and he got his degree while he was in the military. So I think education is valued. It became even more important. I was a teacher early on before I started my career in business, and I taught high school juniors and seniors in high school. And so learning is also important. I think being a teacher shifted and shaped up those values. I think being a mother shaped those values. My husband and I have been together for 42 years. So being in a long-term marriage certainly has shaped those values.
Okay. Would you say that there's a particular event that stands out in your life as something that changed you or impacted you?
Mm. Mm. I don't know if there was one particular event. I think several. With my dad being in the service, he was deployed often, and he would be in our lives for several months, and then out of our lives several months. He was a CB in the Navy, and which is construction battalion. I think that probably just growing up in that kind of a system. My mother always worked, and she always had really, I would say, responsible jobs. You know, her jobs were managing people, and despite her education, she was very successful in her career. And so I would say that just growing up in a Navy family and removed often certainly shaped my values. And then I would say going to college, that was a big event for me to be able to go to college and to live away from home and to live away from my family and to begin to experience my own who am I? You know, what am I? You know, when you're raised, I was the oldest daughter, not the oldest child. I had an older brother, and I think the college experience definitely taught me about discipline and a lack of discipline. It taught me about being able to do what I want to do, and no one really knows. So I got to experiment with different aspects of my life that I didn't experience, what I wasn't able to experiment with while I was living home. So college shaped me for sure. And, you know, then I went off to teach by myself. It was my first experience, and I went way up north in Maine to teach high school, and I had never driven that far north. And that whole experience, living on my own, having my own apartment, being in a faculty role, definitely was, you know, shifted who I am today.
Okay. And who would you say have been some of the influences that you've run into in your life? And how have those people really touched you?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I was just thinking about this the other day. I have had, you know, definitely other than family, you know, touching me in different ways. I have had some incredible leaders that saw value in me that I didn't see in myself, and helped me to explore that and encouraged me, supported me. I think certainly one was one of the first jobs I had as a leader, an executive for, I was 25 years old, for a grocery chain, a family-owned business. And the owner, the son of there was a father-son business. He absolutely saw value in what I did and encouraged me. And then as I went on I worked for Hannaford Brothers, and here they're based out of Maine, but they're all over the East Coast. They're a grocery business. And I had several leaders, especially two women leaders who, which was very unusual in my time, to have women who were in a vice president or an executive role for a corporation or a company. And I felt that both of those women truly influenced me in my own leadership style, but also in believing in myself a lot. So that was huge. And I also had some male bosses that were the same, but I think I was more impacted by the two women.
Okay. And since you're on that topic, I am curious how you have come to understand yourself and experience yourself in terms of your gender or as a woman, and how has that evolution or awareness happen for you?
It has absolutely been an awareness, and it has been a journey since I probably was 18. I would say 17 or 18 when I left home and started college. I started to really explore who I was, and certainly that was in the 70s. I graduated from high school in 73, so I'm aging myself, of course, but and started college in 73. And it was a very tumultuous time in the world. And it was a time where women were clearly finding their voices. It was a time when, we all know sex, drugs, and rock and roll were way out there. And, I came from a very strict parents. And so that it just gave me a chance to explore all of that, but totally started to explore myself as a woman. And when the year I got married, which was I was 24, and that was in 79, I ran into a friend, and in fact, she was the spouse of the dean of students that I worked for. I was head RA at college and an RA. And I ran into her in the grocery store, and she said, "Oh, we're having this open house for a women's group." And this was in 1979. And she said, "Can you come?" And I said, "Oh, I'd love to do that." Now, I had also just read the year before the book by Marilyn French, The Women's Room. And I read that I was in part of a book club, got it. And that book completely impacted my thinking. Just started to ask questions about, religion and what it was like to be the traditional wife and traditional woman, and as well as men. And so I joined this women's group, and I literally 3 weeks maybe after I got married, and that particular group was
It's
so
good to nip things in the
instrumental.
bud, before you
Yeah.
start repeating those patterns.
Yeah. What's that?
It's good to nip things in the bud,
Yeah.
before the patterns start unconsciously repeating themselves.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Nice awareness. Totally started to look at that. And my husband and I had been dating for 6 years. We met in college, and we went to different schools, but we met. And it was one of those kind of, we fell in love at first sight type of relationships. But we broke up a couple of times during that 6-year period. And then we decided to get married. And I think that it not only impacted me, it certainly impacted my husband. And if you were to interview him, I'm sure he would have a lot to say about it. But I'm not sure it would be in a negative way, but you never know what his take on it is.
He stayed for 40, how many years?
We've been married 42 years, and we dated on and off for 6 years. So we've been together a long time. And his sister always says that he's a different person than whom she grew up with, and she gives me full credit for that. But truly, I can't take the credit for it. He has to take credit for his ability to maybe have some self-awareness and to grow as a man, as a partner, and as a father, for sure. But that particular group definitely changed the direction for me as an individual and for us as a couple. And I'm still connected to all of those women.
Now you've mentioned some dates. You said you aged yourself.
Yes.
So I am curious where you are in your relationship with age and aging. How is that for you? How do you understand it or experience it?
I am in a, I wouldn't even say it's a good place. I'm in a place of curiosity. I have been very, very active throughout most of my life, but certainly in the last 30 years. I was a runner, as I mentioned before, paddler, cross-country skier, cyclist. So outdoor activity is incredibly important to me. And my daughter actually is going to graduate as a therapist in May, and her goal is to do adventure therapy and outdoor therapy. And so we may work together in some of that work, as we take folks onto adventures, and I'll get to be a part of that, which would be very, very exciting. So that whole outdoor adventure and nature has been incredibly important to me. And I think the aging piece is that I sometimes feel like I'm still 40, and I'm 66. I'll be 67 on Sunday. So I forget that I don't have the same kind of physical endurance that I do. My mind thinks I do, but my body doesn't always jive with that. And most of my friends are very active, so we stay. We do a lot of trips, hiking trips. I do a lot of adventure hiking. I've hiked all over the world, and in this country as well. And it's just part of what I do. So I'm always aware of the fact that I'm closer to 70 now, and my mom is only 18 years older than me, and she's actually going through starting chemotherapy on Monday. She has cancer, and so that gap. Thank you. That gap between our ages feels so much smaller, and even though it's always been 18 years between us, it all of a sudden feels like, oh, she's only 18 years older than I am. And and we take care of, my brother lives with my parents, but we take care of my parents, and Joe's father also is disabled, and he lives a mile from us in a home, one of our homes. And so aging is always there. It's big now. And my daughter just turned 32, and that she's no longer 5, and so it's there. And I haven't quite come to, I don't know if I have to come to terms with it or not. I'm just in it, and I have no intention of letting it slow me down. I'm just sort of in it, and it's there. So and I don't know if I really have a relationship with aging. I just think it's become a part of who I am.
That's fair enough. And another question, another sort of relationship with abstract things question is, how do you experience power and privilege in your life?
Yeah, privilege is a real hard word, when, especially for someone like me who is white and female. I have gone, I did not feel privileged as a child, even though I had white privilege and was not aware of it. I grew up in Nevada and Las Vegas. So there was definitely segregation in my early part of my childhood, and integration as I grew older. And I never thought of myself as being privileged, because we did not have a lot of money. In fact, I would have called us poor. And we had 5 children. My mother always had to work, and my father was also, as I mentioned earlier, in the military. So I never really thought much about privilege, thinking that I didn't have it, until probably the last 5 years is when I began to look at the privilege of being a white person. And so I have a very different awareness of that. I always considered myself to be equal and treat people equal and expected to be treated equally. That was just an expectation of mine. And but whether it was gender or race or ageism. And I think, I took a course called the Humility Project through the Gestalt Center on Cape Cod that just blew me away, to think about privilege in a very different way. It's certainly conversations I've had with my daughter as she has been exploring becoming a therapist. We've had many conversations about white privilege. So it's very much in front of me. now that I think about it. And I have privilege now because I am able to have my own business and I can pay my bills, and I'm not without food. So, and I can travel. So there's a lot of privilege that I have that I never really, I don't think I took it. I think I did maybe take it for granted until my awareness really shifted even more with it. And when you grow up in the military, you grow up with people of all colors and cultures. It's just what you do. And so for me, the segregation was in other places, but not necessarily on the base or places that we lived. And I think when I started this program with Gestalt, it truly opened my eyes to laws and just so many things that I just didn't think about. And I was an executive for HR for 3 national companies, and so I felt like I always was pushing the envelope in our organization to create equality, and I did. But when I look back now around the influence that companies and organizations could have on privilege, I do not feel I had an awareness of it in the way that I do today.
Yeah. I mean, it's remarkable. I feel very disconnected sort of from American culture in particular, because I've been in Mexico for 20 years.
Yeah.
But as I was hearing your evolution, and I'm not saying this critically at all, it's just seems like you were sort of remarkably positioned in time and space for that Protestant work ethic idea to actually be able to work. And
Truly.
it's remarkable, because I see so many people sort of trying to apply that, but they're either in the wrong time or in the wrong place or in the wrong body.
Right.
And it doesn't work. But it seems like you sort of hit that sweet spot.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think, we, my father was very strict, and he knows this. So if he ever listens to this, he'll know I'm not saying anything he doesn't know, but he was very strict. And part of that was that we had to earn our own way. So I actually paid room and board when I got my first job. I had to give money so that my daughter, and it wasn't a lot of money, but that was his value system. And so I would give, I think it was $10 a week out of my paycheck so that my sister could pick up the things that I did at home, my jobs at home. So there was, and he joined the military when he was 17 or 18 and young. He must have lied about his age, I'm sure. But so being able to work, I remember in high school, I got a job, in the grocery store, local grocery store, but I also cleaned houses for Navy women, Navy wives, for $2 an hour, because I had enough space between, I lived 20 minutes away from school. So I would just go and clean houses and then go to work at the grocery store from 4 to 9. So I had that.
Yeah, and that's the sweet spot though. That's right. Remarkable that $2 an hour meant something.
It absolutely did.
Yeah.
And when I was in college, there was no money for me to go to college. So either I had to borrow it or earn it. And when my senior year, when I was teaching high school, I was doing my student teaching. I would clean bathrooms in the dormitories at night. So I would teach all day, then come home and do lesson plans. And then about 11 o'clock at night or midnight, I would go to the dorms and clean bathrooms and floors. And that's what I did. And I earned just enough money to pay for my rent because at that point I had moved off campus. So I think that work ethic for sure. And do I think, would I have expected my daughter to do that? No. Did I expect her to start working when she went off to college? I remember the conversation we had with her about, we were driving home from the college she decided to go to, and she said over dinner, "So how are we paying for this?" My husband and I had talked about it. I, at that point, was very fortunate to be in an executive level job, and we could afford to put her through school. But we told her and my husband and I talked about this for a long time, that she had to pay for half her education. And she could do that in any way that she needed to. If she needed to work, or she got a scholarship, that would go towards her half and we would pay the other half. And that I would continue to buy her the clothes that she needed, coats and, boots and those kinds of things that I would have bought her when she was home, but the rest was up to her. And Joe and I talk about this all the time. She looked at both of us and she said, I guess I better get a job, and she did. She went and got a job, and she had been saving money through other ways over the years. But and we told our parents, and when you give her a gift for Christmas, 50% goes into a bond, and spend the other 50% on what you want to get her. But so she had a lot of money in bonds. So we taught her the value of the dollar, certainly, because both my husband and I came from families where we paid our own way to school, and we both were working very young, whether it was in a grocery store or, picking peas somewhere.
No, I certainly, I hope I didn't come across as trying to diminish. I was just honestly admiring the coincidence of doing that hard work and then actually being able to get the rewards from it in a balanced proportion.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I mean, I hear a lot of stories about people who are, cleaning bathrooms and picking peas, and that's not even, paying for the room and board. It's remarkable. So.
Right, it is. And I think, going back to your original question, that not all of it, but certainly much of it, is because of my white privilege as well. And I don't believe that I thought that. In fact, I know I didn't think that when it was happening. I know I didn't. I just saw myself as a poor white kid, truly, that was, trying to make an earning and trying to go to college and be a first generation college student, and learning new values. So I didn't think about that in the way that I do today.
Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, the other part of the question was sort of also your relationship to power and where you are in that and what you do with it, how you hold it.
Right. I also am not sure that I truly saw myself as powerful or having power. Maybe once I started to work as an executive, all of a sudden I realized that I have a lot of influence with power. Many of my jobs before that were being able to influence without power. So I think I didn't feel valued often, and I didn't feel that my opinion was valued. And I oftentimes thought of that as because I was a woman and a blonde woman. So there was often times that I felt that I was diminished or not taken seriously, and there were times that I wasn't because of that. So the power for me came, first of all, the power of being able to earn money. That creates power, and to be able to pay my bills and to be able to put food on the table. Absolutely, that. For me, everything was, if we could afford to pay bills and put food on the table, that's very powerful. And I still feel that way today. And then how I influenced it was truly in the way that I was an executive, and the way that I ran businesses and was a leader, and trying to be able to use my influence and my power to make change and have change happen that would affect other people. And today, the power that I have, I feel is much more personal, and that I have the power to do whatever I want, and to make up my own mind, have my own decisions, and the power to be vulnerable, to whatever. I feel like it's much more personal, and I didn't feel that way for a long time. And that's my evolution of one of your first questions is the evolution of becoming who I am today is just finding my own personal power and my own authenticity.
Sounds like you found a fair bit of freedom as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there is more freedom. And oftentimes the freedom is from yourself, from myself. The tapes in your head, or the tapes in my head, the shoulds and shouldn'ts, the somebody else's opinion matters more than my own opinion. I think that I truly do not feel that I have come into that until probably in my 50s and maybe my middle 50s. So that is not something that I felt I carried with me through most of my adult life.
And I am curious, because you mentioned your work with leadership and your interest in your valuing of leadership, what that means to you, what leadership is and how you relate to it or work with that in your life.
Yeah. Leadership to me is the ability, first of all, the ability to be self-aware, which is so Gestalt, right? That is such a foundation of Gestalt. And all the work that I do with leaders and being a leader myself is, it isn't about checking off boxes and making a lot of money for a company. I know that other people would not agree with me on that, but I feel that leadership is about being able to bring those who work with you to that same place, whatever that place is, that place of awareness and change, or making something happen in an organization, or whether it be small organization or a large organization. Leadership in the school systems, the kind of people who run school systems. I worked at a college. I was a part of the executive staff at a university here in Maine, and there's being a leader in a university. It's the same qualities I think are important as to whether you're a leader in an organization, or a leader in your community, or a leader in a group. And that is about being able to listen to people, to be able to hear what they have to say. It's kind of being, I know that I always wanted to be seen. I always wanted to be heard, valued, and believed, and respected. Those are the kind of pieces of work that I've done on myself personally to really to expand it. And as Stuart Simon always says, to fatten it up, right? And I want that for other people. To me, a leader does that. A leader gives room for people to be seen, to be heard, to be valued, to be respected, to be believed. So those 5 pieces to me are huge in leadership. And then being able to take it and make change with it, to be able to, whether it's to grow a product that you are passionate about, or to grow individuals to be the future leaders, to raise our children in ways that they can become responsible adults who see people, believe in people, listen to people, value people. So my daughter once said to me, and this is a story that she knows I've repeated. She was working for an organization, and she was a wildlife biologist before that, and she decided to get out of that field because she was tired of doing field work, working with animals in the field. And she took a job working at a local college as a recruiter. And she was so unhappy in that job. She was excited initially. Her skills, she was able to look at the skills that she had as a wildlife biologist and how she could bring that into this particular environment.
Wildlife management with college recruits.
Right, exactly.
Makes perfect sense, actually.
And really, and actually, I'm sure she was quite good at it. But she called me one day and she said, she goes, I don't think I can stay here. And she was very emotional and very upset. And so I kind of took a step back, because, as moms, you want to like make it all better, right? And I just took a step back and I said, well, if you were to leave, what is it that you want when you go somewhere else? What are you looking for? And with huge passion, she said, and choked up almost, she said, I want to feel valued. And what a powerful statement. And it is, and it was so succinct and so real for her. It was the core of who she is. She wanted to feel valued. And I think her choice to move into becoming a therapist, especially she wants to work with the outdoors, but I think her market is probably going to be young people, because she loves that age group, the high school age group. And she worked at a school, a residential school for behavioral children with behavior problems, young people, and she loves it. I love that work, and I think that she wants other people to feel valued. It's such a core for her, and I realize that that's probably one of my cores too. Is that I wanted to be heard and seen and feel valued, and that's what she wanted. And she did make a job change because she didn't feel she would get it in that particular organization.
That definitely makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So where did Gestalt cross your path in all of this? How did that happen?
I actually was thinking about that today, because I thought, I wonder if she's going to ask me that question. The first time that I was exposed to Gestalt was probably 20 plus years ago.
That makes it sound like radiation. I'm sorry.
Exposed to Gestalt. Well, in some ways it is, I guess. Yeah. It's not about drinking the Kool-Aid, but it's definitely very powerful work. I was, somebody had suggested, a friend of mine, and it was actually the individual, he was a dean of students where I went to college, and I maintained a friendship with he and his wife, and we still are great friends today. And he said to me, there's this great program called, I was at that time a vice president for organizational development and human resources for a payroll company here in Maine, based out of Maine, but we are nationwide. And he said, there's this great program that is about organizational development, but it's a Gestalt based. And he said, I highly encourage you to go. And they were bringing the program to Maine, so I didn't have to travel somewhere. And it was 1 day a week for 6 weeks, I think. So it was like a 6-day program. So I signed up for it. I thought, well, this would be great. And that was the first time I started to learn and hear some of the Gestalt principles. I was watching, and I remember this so clearly, watching some of the facilitators and the faculty and thinking, I would really like to do that, because they were so present and they brought so much of themselves to the work. It was so different than getting up and training a group of leaders to manage conflict, or do conflict resolution, or creating values or a mission statement. It was not about teaching at someone or to someone. And plus I'd been a teacher, so that was what I had learned. It was about bringing themselves to the center of that group and giving information, utilizing their presence and their own style. And it absolutely resonated with me. And then I began to pay attention to this whole world of Gestalt and what is that about. And so then I stayed with it, and I'm still in a group there were 4 of us who were in a learning group, and we still get together, 4 women, and we still get together. We're all over the country, and we still get together maybe once or twice a year, and we call ourselves the Gestalt group. So then I didn't start to really explore this a lot until I was making the decision to leave my role as an executive for a company. We were based in Florida, and we were merging our organizations. And I I was ready to come home. I'd been traveling for years and years, and I had an apartment there, and we were merging with a company based out of Texas. And so my travel schedule just got worse, and I also did not feel fully valued by the new CEO, and I didn't align with the value systems of that particular organization based on what I had been driving in the organization that I was presently in. And so I started to toy with the idea of leaving and going out on my own. And eventually I made that decision and partnered with the CEO to stay on board till we could get somebody else, and started to look at starting my own business and moving into the coaching and consulting world. And thought, I'm wondering if there's anything through Gestalt that I could look at, because that whole system really stayed with me over the years. And I used Ed Nevis's book many times in my work as an executive and OD practitioner. So I went online and found out that they had a coaching program that was Gestalt based, and signed up for it. And I started that program the day I left the organization. So I left my corporate world, not all emotionally completely, but definitely stepped into the world of coaching and consulting using Gestalt as a foundation. So I'm relatively new in this field, and relatively new utilizing the principles compared to so many others, such as Carol Brockman, who is just, so beautifully deep in the Gestalt world, and as a therapist and knowledgeable. So I am still learning. I feel like I'm a baby in it, but that's how it started for me. And now I'm on the faculty, so I feel like I'm learning every day. I was just recently reading again, because I'm getting ready to teach a program, The Evolution of the Cape Cod Model, which I'm sure people have talked about, by Joe Melnick and Sonia Nevis. And I met Joe Melnick years and years ago while I was with the grocery business, because he came in as a consultant and I did work with him. So then later, certainly working with him at the center in Wellfleet. So that's every day I'm learning more and more about these amazing concepts, and it is truly the foundation of my coaching business and my consulting business.
And what are some of the challenges that you have run into in this learning and applying and switching?
So the biggest challenge has been to take risk, and to ask powerful questions that can stop people in their tracks, and stop people from to raise their awareness, to really look at, wait a minute, I guess I never thought about it that way. So I would say my comfort level to lean into this work, and to integrate it into my work, and lean into it in a way that feels experimental, and trusting that I'm going to be able to get myself out of it, anything that I get myself into that might not be working, and which is transparency, which is so much about what the principles are about as well. So I would say that that's been my biggest challenge, and also to feel sometimes I feel very insecure with principles, and I feel very new at it. And so my confidence it can get a little shaky for me. And, then I have to sort of lean into that and push through it and take a risk. Because what I've discovered about myself is that my intuition is incredibly powerful for me, and that I have to honor that and notice that and pay attention to it, and really work at why is this coming up for me? What is it? What's the energy going on here between me and my client, and or a room of people? So I would say that has been my biggest challenge. And as I work with some of the senior faculty who are they had the privilege of working with some of the founders of this institute, and with Sonia Nevis, who just was brilliant with this work. And I have met with her and actually trained with her a little tiny bit in comparison to what many others have gotten from her. So there's a whole new wave of us, new faculty, that are bringing different pieces to the center and to this work. And one of that is leadership. My work is, there's a whole leadership realm where I have certainly dabbled in the Gestalt principles and leadership, and I'm almost rarely, if ever, disappointed in the outcome when I stay with the principles and stay with the cycle of experience. It sort of leads me with the work. So I would say that's my challenge. It's just that I feel very like a real newbie to it.
Yeah, it's very, very clever though. Again, the time and the space of the positioning to feel new in a body that shows certain air of experience. That's a lot easier to hide inside of.
Yeah, it is. It is,
rather than being 20 and feeling new, right?
Yeah, exactly. I guess it could be polarizing at times, but I'm at that space in my life where I'm ready to continue my work in a passionate way, and it's not being driven by I have to do this. So I'm at that sweet spot in my life where I can now do the work that brings me joy, that feeds my passions. And so there's something terrifying about that, because it's easier to stay with what you know, and stay with what you're well developed in, and stay with what's made you successful. And so I am making a choice to not just go out and climb mountains and kayak the seas, but to continue this work in a way that truly stretches me.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like a fully creative process at this point.
Yeah, it is. And I'm there because I've been this executive and an HR with all the rules and and now I'm starting to, and I'm working with people in the C-suite who are running wonderful businesses, and that they're interested in having me work with them, and that alone is very exciting. And there's some room with that when you have an executive who wants to be coached because they want to pay attention to what's not working for them and how they can grow. And there's just something so exciting about that. But I take risk. I was working with somebody yesterday. He's an executive for a worldwide company, and we've been working together for a while. And I said to him, I said, let's talk about some of the behaviors that have really helped you to be successful, using the well-developed model, and which is one of my favorite models. And he was just whipping them off. And then I said to him, I said, well, how's it not serving you today? What about that is not serving you? And he just stopped in his tracks. And he said, boy, a lot of it. And I said, so now I think we know where we need to go with your continued development and coaching, because, you know, he's looking to go to another level, and it's about his presence. It's about, you know, his ability to be task oriented and get things done. And those things will be really helpful at the next level, but they're not going to be what is going to lead the organization where it needs to go. So it's exciting to have that. And I often say to people, I can be a little provocative in my coaching and consulting, because I take advantage of the fact that I can, and I put trust in these principles that I'm working with. I trust that they work. So it's been fun. I'm having fun with it, as you can tell.
No, when I listen to that example, and part of me just wants to be like a student and, you know, be like, oh, so you brought awareness to this set of fixed gestalts that were operating, and it's like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, and
So
how has all of this affected you as a person? I mean, you've touched on that in different spots in the answer, but how would you answer that as a direct question? I mean, how has Gestalt affected you as a person?
It has slowed me down. It is, and it has, I feel like I have integrated many parts of myself. So and honored some of those parts, honored the workaholic in me, honored the ability to get things done, honored the being a mother, you know, and what that means, and being a woman and a life partner to somebody. So I would say that the way that I've been impacted most is that I continue. This integration is not done, but I am integrating all parts of myself. And there are some parts I think I still don't know, and I'm still exploring. And so the Gestalt work has opened up my own ability to notice parts of myself and pay attention to it, and explore it. And sometimes exploring it is painful. You know, sometimes it's
nobody said this was all fun, right?
No one said it was all fun. And, you know, I've been in therapy, you know, before, for on and off for years. I've been in therapy, and I thought nothing could get more painful than therapy, right? But of course, you're learning a lot about yourself. And I was very fortunate to have a therapist who integrated body and mind work. So I was able to use the spiritual pieces of that. And I am a person who just flourishes with that kind of therapy. And so it worked for me. And but entering this world with Gestalt, now I now have to be the one who uses her presence in facilitation and in coaching and in consulting with the project. And the only way that I can bring that presence into it is to know what it is and to know who I am. And so that means I have to explore all those pieces of myself. And sometimes it's fun and joyful, and sometimes it is very hard.
And where do you think you're going next? I mean, you've laid some of that out clearly again as well, but is there anything else that you feel you'd add to where you're going?
No, I feel very committed to for at least the next 5 years to stay in this world of working with leaders, and it seems that women leaders are becoming even bigger. It seems like that is becoming a bigger in my world. And I don't believe that it's anything I've directed or created. I think it's just sort of been organically happening. And I'm running a retreat in Costa Rica with co-leading with another woman in April, and it's for women leaders, and to start to look at their own authenticity, and have they lost it, or have they ever found it, and can they bring it back into their work environments, and or life, and owning it. So I'm very interested in that. This is new for me. It's a new venture, and I am terrified that it that it could all fall apart. But I love watching both all men and women grow and get an aha moment. It is so exciting for me to see that, like, wow, because it means that they've opened up somewhere. And when you open up, all of a sudden you can let things in, and it has to shift you in some way. It has to shift, whether and you hope it shift in a way that is even more authentic and helpful, and in a developmental way. So I plan to just slow down some of the consulting work that I've been doing, and grow the more individual coaching, team coaching, and Gestalt. I continue as a faculty, and really deepen that. That's something I want to deepen and do more of. So that's where I see myself going in the next 5 years. And the reason I can answer this is because I've been working on this sort of, what is the next phase of my life, and ready to kind of do some business development around it. And it isn't even so much about getting more clients or more business, because I also want to play. I want to be able to go. I want to. I'm going for my sea kayak guide exam in another couple of months. And I work, one of my colleagues, she has her own outdoor business, and so I often co-lead with her. I love that part of it, taking people out to experience the ocean and nature. So I'm sort of exploring both of those areas, and so I'm slowing down one end of my work. It's not driven by how many clients I get. It's just about, am I having fun, and is the folks that I'm working with, are they getting something out of this? So that's really where I'm going. And I don't know if it's clear or not clear, but that's sort of where I'm headed. That's where I'm headed.
I've noticed coaches have a much more clear answer for that question than some of us who are just, normal therapist-y people.
Yeah. Well, some therapists have become coaches, but I think that as a coach, we in Gestalt coaching, we stay in the here and now, right? And so that is part of it. And so, we might lead somebody to, and we do, if you're on a journey, somebody's on a journey, you're going to lead them to a spot that may have impacted how they're operating in today's world and in their life today. But as coaches, our job is to bring them back to, so how is that working today? I think as therapists, that's a whole playground you get to play in, that I don't get to play in, because I don't have the skills for it or the license for it. So maybe there's a little freedom in that. I don't know, as a coach, but
yeah, that's interesting. I'm actually quite happy to have been speaking to people on different levels of involvement with Gestalt. Because if you get into one niche, they start talking badly about other niches, and
oh yeah,
there is that thing of Gestalt is only for, and then everybody has a different opinion.
Yeah.
So I do value the fact that I'm hearing from students, consultants, coaches, therapists, academics.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and all of those mean different things in terms of licensure, social positioning,
right, exactly,
in every different country. So it's really remarkable.
It's very interesting. And how I view Gestalt is that it's a foundation that I choose to utilize. it's really, you could call it one great big intervention, right? You can say, well, I'm going to use Gestalt methodology in this particular intervention. And maybe I'm really diminishing it, which is not at all my intent. But I see it as one venue that I could be using, and it's a venue that I've chosen because it resonates with me and works with me. And I think the center, that the Gestalt Center down in Wellfleet, is definitely exploring, you know, as we expand leadership and expand other arenas. It isn't just therapists that are using this methodology. And quite frankly, it's created some nice language for my daughter and I, because she is, you know, going to have her LCPC you know, in May, and she is familiar with some of the language because I use it, and you know, and in my own language, and even raising her. And so I just gave her this book, actually. We were cross country skiing last week for a couple of days together, and I said, I've got 2 of these copies, and I'd like you to read it, because it'll just share with you some of the beginnings of the world that I'm in. And I think it'll also just enhance some of the knowledge that she's had in studying. So, because she says she feels she leans towards Gestalt in her therapy as well. But
that's a fortunate coincidence then. I mean,
yes, it is.
God forbid she should be doing experiments on rats. You know?
Right. You're right, exactly. Yeah. Instead, people.
Yeah. So is there any part of you that you feel like we've left out that you would like to bring in at this point?
I don't think so. I think you've covered it all. Kind of where I'm at today, starting with the aging question. So,
Okay. Well, if there is nothing that you would like to add, I really appreciated sitting with you, and I'm sort of getting a sense of being with someone who is incredibly well resourced, and I appreciate your sharing.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your interview.
Thanks.